Alright, what is going on, people of the internet, and welcome back to the episode of Ark Survival Evolved Max Melee Damage, and this time because nobody requested anything else in the entire comments. I asked for it in the video, and there was one person who said Max Melee Damage Plesiosaur, and hey buddy, you get your wish, we're doing it. So right now, I guess the mod's loading for us. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to hop into the water here, and we are going to summon us a 120 Plesiosaur, not one, but 5, because if this is your first Max Melee Damage episode, welcome, and what happens here is basically because there's no real way to find what the maximum melee damage is, we're basically going to go ahead and summon in 5 level 120s, which is the highest level you can get, naturally occurring in 1.0 difficulty Ark. And what we're going to do is we're going to take 5 of them, going off of the typical 5x5 scientific trials, because if it's good enough for science, it's good enough for Ark. So we're going to submit in our first one here to get a figure of what we're going to be looking at, and it has about 250% melee damage. So you can see here, when I go to jump onto it and look at its stats, I'm going to ride it around a little bit here just to get a figure of how the Plesiosaur controls, and then we're going to summon in a bunch more. So we're going to freeze the game right here just to really see what the Plesiosaur is like, and we're going to summon in about 4 more now. So once we have the other 4, then we can look at the 5 different melee damages that we have been yielded with, and actually it's pretty low. I mean, I found with the Plesiosaur that it was quite a low percentage for melee damage. We summoned in 5 here, and I'm going to turn off players only, because right now we have a mishmash of Plesiosaurs, and it's a little strange, but right now we're going to refreeze the game here, and we're just going to go ahead and just hit Shift and F3, and then click on all these guys. And of course, it's going to immediately Forcetame them, and we're just going to swim around them and look at their melee damage. So here is our original, sitting at about 245% melee damage, which is pretty terrible, and I'm not sure if the Plesiosaur has actually a lower melee damage, because when we looked at other creatures like the direwolf, we got 350% yesterday. That's fantastic. I mean, it's one of the best ones I think we've ever gotten. I think we might have even gotten like 375%, which is like the highest that I've seen post-nerf. So, of course, here is the fastest one that we've gotten. It's actually a great-looking red one here. So I'm going to re-enable players only, and we're going to go ahead and forget about these guys just like they forgot how to swim. So they're going to sink to the bottom of the ocean. Not really sure how that works. But, yeah, we've got our Plesiosaur, and it's a nice red one. I mean, it looks great, and there's still the glitch in it that you can go way above the surface of the water, and I didn't even mean to do this one. This was actually just, it just sort of happened just because I'm not really sure why. Maybe they made it so you couldn't get beached, and as a result of that, you could go far up on the coast. So, a very necessary change if you played Ark much earlier on in the PC release, like I did in July and August when it was very brand new. If you ever had a sea creature, you really had to worry for it. I mean, the darn thing, it was mainly megalodons because the ichthyes hadn't been added yet, and there was no plesiosaurs or mosasaurs, and the ocean was pretty much comprised of megapiranhas and megalodons and coals. And I mean, if you brought your megalodon any bit closer to land, then it would, the open ocean practically, it would probably drown. And it was really terrible. So I'm glad that they've made it so that we can just sort of sit out here. And I actually tried a couple times to enter the fly command, because of course you can do that with creatures, but I mean, we got some pretty crazy ragdolling megalodons here, but sadly there is no way of actually getting the Plesiosaur out of the water. You can see here, in a bit here, I enter the fly command in a console, which would normally give your creature the ability to fly, but I try it several times, both on land here when I've beached it and when I'm in the open ocean. Neither time works. I was really looking forward to possibly seeing a Plesiosaur flying. I think that would have been hilarious to see, but I can completely understand why that's not in the game, because could you imagine the admin abuse on giant non-dedicated servers run by people that have like 100 members online at once, and you just see this mosasaur flying through the air? That would be so broken. So you can see here that I am going ahead and changing the time just because it's getting a little dark, and we want to make sure that we got good daylight, good lighting for this. So Plesiosaur took a lot of damage from that, actually. It took over 2,000 damage from those 5 megalodons, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering that it takes a little while to heal, the nerf definitely made it so that your creatures aren't invincible anymore. I mean, I remember having T-Rexes and being able to venture around Ark, no worries, and the Plesiosaur is kind of the water equivalent of that. I mean, you have the Giganotosaurus, which is a good comparison for the Mosasaur. They're quite even creatures. They have over 100,000 health and unfathomably large amounts of melee damage stock, and the Plesiosaur is kind of the step down from that. It has very similar stats to a Rex. It has 8,000 health, which I imagine is quite a bit more than the Rex, but I think that the damage output is very comparable and maybe a bit lower, so it's cool to see. Unfortunately, because it's Plesiosaur, I mean, you're kind of holding onto the saddle with both hands because it's underwater. You can't actually take out the ACM remote to give it the levels like that, so I just go ahead and enter the command there anyway. No real issue, we're moving on. So, the Plesiosaur, fantastic creature. Very good looking, actually. I quite like it. I mean, I think that I would rather have a Plesiosaur than probably the other two water mounts. The only issue that I have with it, really, is that you can't take them anywhere because Ark is so landlocked. There are no rivers that lead into the center of the map, and I know that the devs were thinking about adding that. I remember reading up a thread on r/playark about it, but it hasn't been added yet, and as a result, Megalodons are the only thing that's going to get anywhere in closer to land and still be able to have any capabilities of attacking things in the water, because Ichthyes, while I'm sure they can take on some things, are not as suited for tanking damage as the Plesiosaur or the Mosasaur. So right here we're going to be taking on the 120 Rex. Fantastic target, because, I mean, aside from the Giga, which is essentially unkillable, the Rex is a very good it's a very good reference point for how much damage a creature does, because the Rexes would probably have about 1,000 to 2,000 health. I would assume, no, they'd have a bit more. They'd have probably about 5,000 wild. After the taming bonuses, it would probably jump up to about 8,000, 9,000, which is very comparable to the Plesiosaur. I mean, I think that the Plesiosaur still does have a bit more tankiness around it, just because it is quite a bit larger than the Rex, you can see here. But if we're going to be looking at the underwater version of the Rex, why not put it up against the Bronto, which is the direct predator, or prey. It'd be kind of weird if it was the other way around, of the T-Rex, but that'd be a good mod, actually. Anyway, I'm looking at doing a modded series for Ark, and I would probably be doing that with some friends, and I've been looking at some mods to add. I'm definitely going to do the center as the map. If you haven't seen that before, it's gorgeous. It's a fantastic looking map. But that is the main plan that I'm going to be looking at, and I don't know if there are any other mods that would be going well with it. I'm for sure going to do Akushima, which is a very essential mod for Ark, and probably a Dino overhaul, but I'm not sure if there's compatibility with that and the new map, as well as making torches brighter, but that's really just a personal thing. So if there are any other things that could really boost the experience of playing Ark and make it a bit more fun, I know that there is the Anunnaki bosses mod, and I was thinking about doing that, but I feel like it's a big learning curve around that, and it makes it a little stranger. I'm not really sure if I'm going to include that, but I'm giving that one some thought as well. But if there's any other things that can really add to the experience of Ark, definitely leave a comment about that, because I'd be interested to read up on it. So that is a huge coal that we found. Oh my god, 2.8 times. That is probably the biggest one I've ever seen. We did the max movement speed coal, and I think we got a 1.4. But this one is fantastically large, double the size practically. So anyway, that's going to pretty much do it from us. Thank you for watching. If you've got suggestions for future episodes, it's going to be 2 again tomorrow, 1 max speed. Actually, we're going to put a vote in the comments. There are 3 creatures being released. I'm going to leave 3 comments. Upvote the one. You can upvote as many as you want, but I'm using that as a kind of voting system. So it was at this moment that Bagel realized that he was running out of time. Upvote that one for the creatures that are going to be released tomorrow. And anyway, that's going to do it from us. Thank you for watching. If you see you next episode of whatever big. Peace. Can you make the case for a max speed build? Yeah, if you're trying to get these things to follow you in a pack, it would make sense, because you've got enough melee damage spread out between 10 or 20 of these things that it doesn't really matter. So right now what we're going to do here is we're going to put on players only to freeze the game, and we're going to swim on Rex. I completely forgot that I had the remote for doing this, so you're going to see later when we move on, because normally what we would do is we would use the Broodmother, and then we would test to see how fast it kills it. And I felt pretty good about the Giga when I did it with the pilot episode for this series, because the Giga killed the Broodmother in 20 seconds, but then we moved on to the Beaver, which has a fantastic damage output, and it took over, 4 minutes. So I'm not thinking we're going to stick with the Broodmother.